and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World, and of course accompanied by Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the political dynamics of the country and the kind of developments that we've seen surrounding the President's office and of course the President himself. There was of course a controversy around the bills in which of course new developments have taken place, and our second segment is going to focus on that. But first, we're also going to be taking a look at the oft debated topic of when the elections are going to be held, and this is something that we've been talking about from very long in the past as well, and something of course that is a big question mark as to how it is going to proceed further. Of course, as the previous government was stepping out, it was noted that the CCI of course had ratified the new census results, because of which we saw that the ECP has also spoken about delimitations being in order and moving forward with that process, which of course means that the elections might possibly be going through a delay and will not follow the constitutional time period of 90 days. And of course, this is something that is also debated in terms of what are the legal provisions and what sort of aspects of the constitution take precedence over others. In the development with the President's office, we have seen that given this 90-day time period, the President has also invited the Chief Election Commissioner to come forward and have a meeting today or tomorrow to talk about exactly what is the date of the elections going to be. And this is of course an important concern, especially given the kind of time frame that is required to move forward with the delimitations process and also take the new census results into account. Whether or not that's something that can be done, of course, is a big question mark also on the legality of what sort of aspects of the constitutions are going to be given more significance and importance, and then also in terms of how exactly will the ECP and the President's office going to interact, because this is something that is not happening the first time around. We've also seen that back in February also the President had spoken with reference to the date of elections in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Punjab, and of course the Election Commission then also had refused to participate in that meeting, given the fact that the matter was sub judice to the law. And this is important as given the fact that now again a similar situation is taking place. So what sort of legalities are involved with this particular meetings and decisions surrounding the election date, and what is going to be the relationship like moving forward, and what is the ECP and the President's call on that? Our second segment, like I said earlier, is going to be focusing on the development surrounding the bills, and this is going to be also something that unfortunately will perhaps be taking a long time to resolve. But we've seen that so far there are concerns with regards to what the President had tweeted about earlier previously on the weekend. We also saw that in a conversation that has come forward between the President and the Secretary, that this is something that the President has reportedly admitted to, saying that this is something that was done due to party pressure. Of course, this is not the first time that the President has been attacked in terms of the party, his affiliations with the party, the previous ruling regime, the PTI, and what his decisions are. But regardless of that, there of course have been many other question marks that have been raised, with the Principal Secretary also sharing his concerns in a letter. So we'll be taking a look at what that means, and especially in terms of how then the legalities are going to take place, with the consequence for not just the Principal Secretary but also the President, and how exactly will we be able to figure out the truth, and then of course see how anyone is going to be held accountable. So for this and more, as always, of course, as introduced earlier, we've been joined by Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal in the studios. Online also we've been joined by our guests, senior political analyst and legal expert, Barrister Safi Ghauri, and senior journalist Ms. Batool Rajput. Thank you everyone for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Let me start with you, Barrister Safi. The situation, of course, with reference to what we've seen with regards to the ECP and the President is not something new. But given the current situation, I want to understand that when we talk about the new census results and the ECB talking about new delimitations, the kind of time frame that perhaps a lot of people have made peace with is around March 2024 or the first quarter of the next year. But then there's always a debate also going on with regards to the 90-day time period. What exactly, first of all, is the constitutional provisions regarding this matter, so that then we can discuss what the President has spoken about?
Having me, Sana. The Constitution of Pakistan is clear. It says that there is to be a 90-day time period in which elections are to be held. I don't think there is much of a debate over whether the constitution clearly stipulates a 90-day period or not. That's never been an issue. However,
Right.
the constitution, of course, has to be a real world constitution. It has to adhere to principles that are being carried out. If 90 days is impossible to carry out, then the election commission, there's some noise in the background. Okay. So what I was saying is that the 90-day period, however, has to be applicable in the real world. And the determining factor for the real world in this case is the election commission. The Constitution of Pakistan has clearly made a separate authority that has the responsibility of carrying out these elections, figuring out when those elections are to be and also deciding what manner the elections are to be held in. So the fact that the president today, when stating that he is asking the chief election commissioner to meet him to decide when the elections are to be held and decide an election date as per the 90-day period, has quoted Article 48, subsection 5 of the Constitution, seems to have crossed his limits for a variety of reasons. Firstly,
Okay.
because Pakistan has a parliamentary system. The president is a titular head of state. The president does not have any inherent powers. The president draws his powers from the parliament. And the very section that he quoted, Article 48 of the Constitution, Article 48(1) clearly states that the president is to act on the advice of the prime minister and the cabinet. So the president in this particular case seems to be acting of his own accord, just deciding that he's going to cherry pick certain sections of the constitution and ignore others. But regardless, even if we were to believe that the president of his own accord has some powers, and since he is titular and since it is his responsibility to announce elections, so he is in fact supposed to meet with the election commissioner at some point of time. So if he were to meet the election commissioner tomorrow, he does not have any authority to tell him to do so within 90 days. He can only advise on it, and the election commissioner himself is empowered to choose a date. And in this particular scenario, we've seen that we have conflict of two laws. We have, of course, the 90-day period stipulated in the Constitution, but we also have the Election Act, which states that the elections must be held after fresh delimitations have been drawn out. Now, fresh delimitations have not been drawn out, and they're saying that delimitations will be drawn out sometime in December. Obviously, a time period that have crossed the 90-day period for elections. So this is a problem. I honestly, unfortunately, think that like all other problems in Pakistan, this problem is also will end up in the Supreme Court, and it is our honorable Chief Justice who will have to decide the fate of what happens with the elections and how legal the actions of the president are.
Right, absolutely. And we'll talk more about that as well. But Ms. Batool, given the situation that, of course, we'll explore further in our next segment as well, but there is, of course, a lot of conversation around the president these days. And we've seen it previously as well, since, of course, the ouster of the former prime minister, that there were numerous occasions on which the kind of party affiliations that the president has were questioned, or there were reports or people of the opinion that they may also impact his decision making. And of course, in a lot of ways, the office, of course, is something which is very important and needs to be impartial. But given the kind of actions that we have seen recently also and previously by this president, do you think that somewhere that sort of credibility is now being questioned? And do you think that that's being done rightly so?
Right, of course. Sana, sorry.
Yes, Batool, go ahead. I'll come back to you guys. No worries.
Sana, actually, you're quite unclear. What I have understood, I'll answer that accordingly. My colleague has mentioned that he's saying that there is a lacuna in the law, that at one side the constitution says that the elections should be held within 90 days, and then there is another requirement that it should be done after new delimitations. But there is a difference that I want to clear, that the new delimitation law is a subordinate law, and the elections to be held within 90 days is according to the constitution. So technically the constitution is superior than subordinate law. So not the new delimitation. So this is something that we need to understand, and we need to support that what country exactly needs and what the law says exactly. So the law says that you go for elections and the new delimitations can wait. So this is one thing I wanted to. On the other hand, do you remember that one what happened in Punjab after a run of elections and after the reconsideration of Article 63A? We could understand that there was debate who is responsible for giving dates of elections, uh, uh, whether the chief election commission. So after that debate, matter went to the Supreme Court, and we got a little bit of that at least can initiate the process. The president can initiate the process, and he sign of federation. He can do this coordination work between the authorities of provinces, and it is the election commission supposed to give the final date. Election commission. So, and if it's written by election can consult with the Supreme Court according to Article 58. So this is very, and I think we should simple as simple as possible, because we have already wasted a lot of time as media, as nation, as politicians, as society in this legal debate, because there has been lacunas within the within corporations, and from the last one we have seen unprecedented matter legally and politically. So I think we need to be really slow. We need, at this very point, we need to go really slow to understand what the country needs. And on the other hand, if President has initiated the process, let's take it really easy. Okay, if has done it. Now we should look after the election, how he's going to the matter and report it.
Right.
The question is to take
right. Unfortunately, Batool, we're unable to hear you clearly, but Faisal had a question. Yes, Faisal.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question from obviously Barrister Safi. Barrister Safi, this is another situation, and earlier this year, we did face a similar kind of situation in which February, I think 7th or 9th of April, was the date which was obviously pushed by the president at that time for the elections, provincial elections, but of course that did not take place, and eventually the matter straight away went into the courts. Earlier, of course, you were saying that the meeting would not be providing any of such dates on which the elections could be held, and once again we will be seeing that the matter would be taken to the Supreme Court. Can we say that this time around situation might be a bit different from the previous one, because at that time, of course, we had the federal government in place and the system was working not obviously as an ad hoc base or interim base. It was working as a proper parliamentarian based, and would it be a different solution to it from the previous one, or it would be very similar to the previous one?
Thank you so much, Raja Saab. What an excellent question. This is going to be very different. Last time around, the Supreme Court refrained from acting, stating that the federal government is already there. The Election Commission presented a defense stating that due to security and monetary restraints, they cannot have elections in the provinces, and they would rather that provincial and federal elections take place at the same time. Nothing as such happened to the plea, but you're absolutely right. Now the caretaker cabinet has come in. The Prime Minister has clearly stated that this time around they are here only for caretaking purposes, and they are here temporarily. The cabinet has been informed in the inaugural address of the Prime Minister, and of course that's what the real purpose is as well. But now let's look at the legal aspect from a different angle. So my colleague rightly pointed out that the law of Election Act 2017 is subordinate to the Constitution. There is absolutely no doubt about that, and nobody would ever argue that it is equal to the Constitution either. However, there are laws within the Constitution that still arise from the action of the Election Act 2017, and those are laws that deal with the right of a fair trial and fair representation. So when we're talking about delimitations, and now the fact that a census has been done, it has been adopted by the CCI, and this result is something that many people will get impacted by. I've often stated that whenever censuses take place and whenever delimitations are drawn, they always attract hundreds and thousands of cases. I myself, as a lawyer, am a beneficiary of the many cases that we go and file in the election commission as a result of them, because many people don't agree with the way the election commission has drawn out such delimitations. Can you take away their right? Does the constitution permit you to take away their right by stating on the one hand that it needs to be done in 90 days, and on the other hand take away your right for fair representation, take away your right for a fair hearing, take away your right for a fair trial, take away your right to represent your own people as per the constitution, article 56, 57? And these are the kind of different considerations that have already been raised by the Supreme Court in various cases in the past. And I believe that that's what the problem is. Now we have to decide whether the fundamental rights that are laid down in the first 20 articles of the Constitution are going to prevail over the different articles of the Constitution that state that they need to take place in 90 days. The Supreme Court is of course empowered to do so. They may choose whatever interpretation they want to, but that is precisely why I say that this is a matter for the Supreme Court to decide, not for us to figure out at this point of time. It's inevitable that the Supreme Court will be taking away someone's right here.
Right, and that's important, especially when we take a look at where the president also comes in, Farrukh, because given the fact that there doesn't seem to be clarity in terms of what sort of provisions in the constitution are going to be given more preference, and there's of course we have of course heard differing opinions on the matter of what is more important than the other. But in terms of really this matter being decided, again, as Barrister was also speaking about, will unfortunately eventually be taken to courts. And so while that is the situation, doesn't that make it even more interesting to see that the president then has called the Chief Election Commissioner to speak about the setting of the election date and also of course the 90-day time period? Is that also being taken as a given that provision of the Constitution is more important than the others?
Right, Sana, and that is a fascinating question. Let me begin by actually first contending what was said earlier regarding Article 224 that actually stipulates a finite time for the elections, right? 60 days in regular time frame, but 90 days if it is dissolved, the assembly is dissolved before its regular time. But then there is Article 51.5, right? Article 51, especially its clause 5, says that once census results have been notified, then the elections take place according to that census. And just to remind everybody, we cannot actually, I don't hold any brief for the court, I don't hold brief for the government, I don't hold any brief for the presidency. But with due respect, just to clarify to the audiences, because it is important to remember that somehow, because our constitution has actually evolved in such a way that it has become a patchwork quilt, there are clauses that actually clash with each other, and that's why perhaps we'll have to go to a court. But this amazing insistence on just literal interpretation of Article 224 while forgetting every other article is something that is peculiar to our media, that is like very fundamentalist when it comes to surprisingly only this clause, nothing else, right? Umpteen other things are there in the Constitution. You would not hear any pundit actually talking about that at all. But when it comes to 90 days, we have seen an example of how our Constitution fails to give you answers in various situations. For example, in Punjab, the elections, as Faisal pointed out, in Punjab there were elections to be held. At that time, we learned that there are two problems. One, the monies are not available. Number two, security situation is not such that so much army can be deployed there. Now, in the absence of that, do we have a remedy in the Constitution? No. Why not? Because usually it is thought that these matters can be inferred and interpreted. One example is there, Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto Sahiba was assassinated, and the same Constitution stood at that time, minus 18th Amendment, and at that time elections were delayed. So there is a legitimate cause for delaying the elections, especially when the people are there, and you are talking about 30 million more people who have been counted in this census, which were not in the previous census, right? Now let us talk about Sir President. It is correct that he has actually quoted the right, a constitutional clause, the Article 48, and that of course talks about President asking Election Commission and all that. But the problem is the office of President does not have agency of its own, especially in this case. So if you, as was pointed out by Safi, there is clear mention that he can do it at the advice of the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Can you show me any advice coming from the Prime Minister of Pakistan on this matter? If not, what is happening? One, I think that our President, if you have seen his patrons, there are two modes in which he has functioned. One, the difficult ones, where he is combative and he is assertive because he does not agree with the political agenda of the government of the time. The other one is quiet mode, when essentially Supreme Court is surprised that a law that the Supreme Court did not know is going to be passed carries the signatures of the President. Later on, Supreme Court has actually nullified that law, but that also happened. So right now, I think that because he is going to retire, at least if things go in the manner they are supposed to, he is going to retire in a month. And then there's this new controversy that we are going to talk about in the second segment. Because of that, I think he is trying to assert himself that if he goes down fighting. Whether it is going to have any bearing or not is a simple question. Answer is, I don't think there is going to be any serious bearing.
Right, and Farrukh, just a clarification also, when you talk about how the President doesn't have agency in this matter, then, and I understand what you're saying about him having different modes, but I want to know then that what is the gain here in the situation? Because if this is something that is so clear, and if the President makes an action which is out of place, what is it really achieving, even to the President himself or his party or whatever may be the gain really, instead of just for us to be having this debate?
That's a very good point. And let me first of all admit that this time President has played his cards well. Instead of tweeting from his private account, he has actually used the presidential account. Once we saw this letter that is written to Chief Election Commissioner. But I think that at this moment, the sole audience is his own constituency, that is actually PTI. Why? Because you know how PTI works. We have seen it. It works in a colosseum manner. It is one-man party, and every person keeps on fighting with each other for the approval of that one person. So right now, because everybody keeps on saying, why the hell are you sitting there if you cannot help your own party? So the President immediately, if this thing gets litigated and it drags on, he becomes instant martyr. So I think that is the end game here.
Great. Okay. Sana, with your permission, I'll go towards obviously Batool. Batool, you are someone, of course, quite in when it comes to political corridors and gossip. Political gossip is always around you. Just wanted to know from you, which are the parties, political parties, that would be in favor of election to be held within the time frame of 90 days, and of course all of the political parties, they would be keenly looking at whatever the outcome is of the meeting between President and obviously ECP. Can we say that there will be few political parties, they might end up going to the Supreme Court? Any sort of outcome which comes out of it, of course, they will challenge it? I think we've lost her.
Unfortunately, we have lost her, but Barrister Safi, you can take that question.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. If you could just kindly repeat it.
Yeah, Barrister Safi, my question was a very political one, and of course, you being a barrister yourself, you would always be hawking upon the political gossip of Pakistan's political parties.
He's also a political analyst for us, so
Yeah,
he'll be
so
able to say something.
yeah, Barrister Safi, which would be the parties right now, of course, keenly looking at whatever is the outcome of obviously this meeting? Would there be any political parties, going to the courts in favor or against the outcome, and which would be the parties waiting for the time when the elections are to be announced within the 90-day framework?
Right, so Raja Saab, this is of course my personal opinion. I do not, by any stretch of imagination, say that this is correct. But these are things that I hear roaming in and around Islamabad. Having met people from various quarters, I know for a fact that people in PMLN, people in PTI, people in Jamaat Islami, in the PTI progressive group made by Pervez Khattak, by the Tehreek Istikam party, none of them are prepared for elections. None of them have what it takes. All of them want delayed elections so that they can have increased time for party canvassing. The only political party that has a stable vote bank, that does not rely on canvassing, that does not need to go door to door campaigning, is People's Party. People's Party is very confident, and that is why it has been pushing for elections within 90 days. And People's Party feels that if elections are held within time, they will be the one political party that will have the biggest edge, because they already have a fixed vote bank in Sindh, and then with a limited time period, they can quickly assail Punjab and KPK and also Balochistan. It's also, of course, very important to understand that when we talk about such short periods, it's not the popularity of an individual that counts as much as it is the work that is done by political workers. And Stalin famously said that elections are determined by the vote counters, not by the population who cast the vote. And that's true, because political parties like People's Party, who have a good cadre of workers, and even PMLN, who have a good cadre of workers, are at an advantage here, because they can quickly deploy them and reap maximum benefits. Other parties that rely largely on individual popularity, on big jalsas, and trying to sort of gather people around and then convey a point like PTI, are at a disadvantage for sure in a 90-day period.
Right,
Batool,
and
from your side.
yes, and Batool, we'll add to the next segment as well, in which we are going to be talking about, of course, the controversy around the president and the bills, and an interesting development around it is the reported conversation between the principal secretary and the president, where reportedly the president has admitted party pressure based on his decisions. We also saw, of course, earlier a letter by the principal secretary talking about how this was not something that was done in justice, and he wants the FIA to also look into it. So I want to know, when we take a look at this situation and also what we're talking about in terms of what the president's position is and what may be the factors that lead to his decision making, how exactly would you see this current situation, also given the fact that it seems that not much perhaps can be done about the situation, given the fact that he is holding office and most likely will continue to do so irrespective of any sort of an issue with what has happened?
See, if we go through the Article 75 of the Constitution, it clearly tells the procedural way of passing of the amendment bills, or how the laws are made in our country. So whatever the is done by President, it seems to be unclear that whether the process was followed or not. But if we look at it closely, we can see between the lines that the president is trying to be loyal to his previous party, to his previous colleagues, and he's trying his best to do anything for PTI chairman. And this completely is being tried by Chief Justice of Pakistan. Anyhow, it is very relatable. See, previously, whenever there was a amendment or bills or consultation that needed to be approved by president, the president did tweet, or he sometimes he did show consent, sometimes he did not, but it never happened that something has been considered by the parliament or considered by the Senate, and is unaware. So first, why he waited for 1 day or 2 days, and how could he not see the headlines in media, and how could he not read the newspaper? Where was his team at that very time? First question. Secondly, if he is such a powerless president, why is he sitting in a chair? Instead of calling for elections, he should call for the inquiry within the matter instead of just putting up all the burden on his particular team. So I think there needs to be an investigation. I hope it is done by authorities. But the way the president has asked for elections, it seems that he's in hurry to go for elections. Yes, reportedly he has pressurized his secretary to go for what he's saying, and he does not want to support him. And reportedly, doing a day before he did the tweet, he was his former colleagues, and he got emotional or got pressurized. So it is very clear that he has always shown his political inclination, but this time I think he could not do it intelligently, and whatever is there diverged and exposed badly. I think it is like that.
All right. Barrister Safi, I want to know what, in your opinion, is the bigger issue here: the status of the bills and the laws under question, or the fact that the president has accused the principal secretary or his team of doing something, and the concern here of who is being truthful. Which one is a bigger issue at the moment?
So in my opinion, Sana, the reason, this is personally my opinion, of course, I think the president has decided to do this because the political landscape favors him if he were to do this. He's going to be leaving office before 6th September anyways. And right now, his former political party, PTI, seems to be rudderless. The leader of PTI has been disqualified. He's in Atak jail right now. The second in command, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, is also in jail right now. Asad Umar was in jail, has been released, but was in jail, might be going back into jail. Every single one of the leaders of PTI currently have cases against them for things that they have done in the last couple of years. And the president is the only one who's going to come out absolutely clean without any problems. And the party is looking to him to provide that much needed leadership. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to become the president. He's barred from becoming the president of the political party, but a leader who's not in jail, a leader who can actually sit and guide the second tier or the third tier leadership of PTI, whatever that may be, on what the actions are. And he can obviously guide them in a better manner because he can say that I was the president of Pakistan, I have dealt with the highest officers of Pakistan, I've dealt with the military, I've dealt with the chief election commissioner, I have that experience that you really need. PTI does not have senior leadership right now. And I think that's what he has basically done for himself. He probably decided that the life of retirement post 6th September is not suitable for him. So he's set himself up for a lot of action in the coming days.
Right, but Barrister Safi, I think my question remains, I haven't gotten the answer of what is the bigger issue in your opinion, the question of the laws, legality, or the president's truthfulness?
So it's both, of course. The legality and the truthfulness both have to be taken into account. I think we know for a fact that in this particular case, there is one united voice from the bureaucracy, from all political parties, including PTI, that a thorough investigation needs to be done. Nobody is willing to take this narrative by either the president or even by the principal secretary to the president, Waqar Ahmed, as they stated to be. Everybody wants to see what the situation is, and the bureaucracy is very unnerved about it. I read that nobody wants to now go and serve under the president. People are refusing appointments. The lady he selected for the position, Humaira Saiba, also refused. And this is all happening because we don't know whether this is truthful and we don't know whether this was legal. So an investigation is the only way we can truly figure out what the situation is.
Okay.
Yeah. Barrister Safi, one question which keeps on popping in my head, and that is related to he had an option of using obviously another Twitter account, which is of President of Pakistan's official account. He did not use that. That means he did not want that message to go towards the masses at large throughout Pakistan. Instead, he went towards his own personal account, which means that he was only addressing to his political followers Obviously, he hails from PTI. Can we say that this, this issue would be dealt in a way that it was everything he did was to show it to his own personal followers rather than followers of the President of Pakistan's account?
No, unfortunately, Raja Saab, the problem with being the president is that you are then the president of Pakistan. You do not have an individual personality. You do not have your own clout and your own personality. Every action that you take is reflective of your position as the president of Pakistan. That is being what the head of the state, and that is being the titular head of the state. That's exactly what it means. The law does not distinguish between different types of Twitter accounts, although I must applaud you for raising this very, very good question. I have obviously never come across something of the sort. But we have, as example, for instance, if we were to pen down an article, it would still be seen as an article written by the President of Pakistan, not as an article written by Arif Alvi as a person. And so communications that he's making, and we've seen that the impact of those communications has directly been that all international news outlets state that it is the President of Pakistan who's saying that his signatures were used. They're not saying Arif Alvi as an individual. So this is what happens when you occupy high positions. You no longer carry your own personal self. Your personality then flows over into the public.
Right, and that's interesting because Farrukh, that makes me question when we take a look at an individual's identity and his or her own credibility, and then the kind of professional avatar that exists. And I understand how these two might be aligned, especially given such high offices. But then again, the aspects in terms of how decisions and steps are taken, especially those that can potentially undermine your own credibility. Are those actions and measures at the end of the day worth also putting your own personal identity in question? Because we talk about individuals how over the years have had such great records, have performed tremendously well, and then of course people in history are remembered differently. Is that not a point of concern for an individual, especially the president?
Right, Saram. I want to say that when you are elevated to the highest office in the country, it might be titular in nature. Your only job might be to distribute certificates and to receive certificates, right? Distributing as the Chancellor of universities and accepting it from the ambassadors, right? That might be your whole purpose, but still you are the head of the state. So when you are at that high level, you are supposed to have certain caveats in your behavior. I think that was overlooked not only by this presidency, but many other previous ones, especially after 58(2)(b was removed. But I wanted to very quickly go back to the question you put to Barrister Safi, and that is important. Which one is more important? Constitutionality of the two bills, or his own truthfulness? I think that if you look at his own tweet, there are 2 or 3 things that become very clear. What is he saying? He's apologizing to the people who are going to be affected by the laws that have become laws, right? But he's saying, dog ate my homework. What does that mean? He's saying that my staff actually betrayed me. I was sleeping. I asked them 10 days ago to return the bill. Then I went to sleep, and I've woken up, and all of a sudden I find out that this thing actually has become law, and my apologies for that, right? So it is clear that even in his mind, the issue of constitutionality of those bills does not arise, because he thinks that whether he was duped or not, he has actually given assent, deemed to have given assent by withholding those laws, right? Right now, I think that this is the saddest part. Pakistan has become so polarized that we have to actually talk about these things, and he has put himself in a bind through this tweet and aggressive behavior now as well. Otherwise, if you know him personally, I think, and again, that comes back to the question of individual versus the office. You wear many hats, and you are an individual as well. So he is very likable person, honestly. I mean, there are very few politicians with whom I click, and I really enjoy it because he reads books, and I read books as well. Unfortunately, because the party he comes from doesn't have the kind of experience and power, they have really made a dog's breakfast of the whole situation. How? Since they were pushed out of power, they have been actually knocking down everyone who could have actually helped them. And the last man standing was the president, and now they are after him that you actually, sacrifice yourself for the cause of PTI.
Yeah.
And the poor man is actually doing that. So he becomes a martyr, but I don't think PTI is going to forgive the fact that there are, senior officials of the party who are going to be prosecuted based on the laws. He made laws.
Right. Thank you very much, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, of course, Barrister Safi, and thank you, Ms. Batool Rajput, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. There's much more that still remains to be seen, and of course, we'll have much to talk about, but that's all that we have time for today, and we'll see you now tomorrow.